Oh, hi everyone. Today, I'll be doing something very interesting of what I can see to celebrate the new year of the rabbit. To celebrate that year, we're going back in time to 25 years ago of what we could ultimately see in this upcoming review. Right now, I'm making a new idea of a movie called Godzilla 1998. In this tragic backstory of what this film came to be, it was originally written in 1982 by Jan de Bont, which was conceived to be an interesting idea when Toho sold the Godzilla license to Sony Pictures Entertainment, along with its newly acquired subsidiary TriStar Pictures. Since then, Terry Rosie and Ted Elliott were brought to write a script for the film in what it caught the attention of director Jan de Bont. After he directed the hit film Speed, Godzilla was basically his brainchild idea of what it could have looked like. In this early concept, the concept of Godzilla was supposed to be about Godzilla fighting the Griffin in an attempt to pretty much save the world from dying. However, as Jan de Bont stepped down from directing the movie, Roland Emmerich would then decide to create Godzilla more realistic take on wanting to rip off Jurassic Park. From this moment on, it was also dedicated to Tomoyuki Tanaka. Even though he passed away a year before this movie came out, this movie was about the authorities who investigated their way to battle the giant monster who has migrated to New York City to nest his young sense of immigration. However, the immigration backfires when everyone in New York City gets a rude awakening from him in what they tried to stop him from doing this so. This movie, which stars Matthew Broderick, that we all knew he was from The Lion King and Inspector Gadget, Jean Reno, Mario Pitillo, Hank Azaria from The Simpsons, Kevin Dunn, Michael Lerner, and Harry Sharier, that we all knew that he was from The Simpsons as well. Although Hank Azaria would later go on to be involved in The Smurfs, the plot is very, very interesting and what this movie came about. Since then, Godzilla, who was originally a mutated iguana, suddenly escapes from the French Polynesia without the French government knowing that he's going to New York City to pretty much bring the destruction of the whole city. However, as Godzilla runs rampant like a T-Rex on steroids, Godzilla notices that a team of heroes consisting of Nick, Philippi, Audrey, Victor, and their friend Colonel Hicks have an idea of wanting to do this. So they hired the military, which consists of Mayor, which consists of Sergeant O'Neill and the two doctors, Elise Chapman and Mendel Craven, had an idea of hiring General Hunter Anderson to make sure that Cayman's secretary would hire Admiral Phipps to get involved in what this movie was supposed to come up with. From this moment on, they had an idea of luring a mousetrap to lure Godzilla out of the way from New York City unless they tried to sacrifice a taxi driver's taxi cab to get him killed for real. Even though he got killed on screen, he actually survived his death later in an animated series where Malcolm Dennery, Frank Welker, Kevin Dunn, and Michael Lerner would prize their roles from the film. Since then, Heat, led by Nick himself, have decided to lead his teammates to battle giant mutant monsters by letting Godzilla make sure they pave their way to put a stop to some sort of antagonistic villain named Cameron Winter, who used to be a former classmate in college, is actually a devious mogul who wants to control Godzilla with his own unstoppable goals. Even though he's a sadistic smug, he frankly challenges Nick and his Heat members with his master plan to keep Godzilla in line, where he would cover up the acts to maintain his position so he could avoid prosecution. Even though he's still at large, this show sounded like a funny idea. Although they added Dale, Beard, and Hank from King of the Hill, in what I mentioned they were involved in it as unexpected characters, I had no idea why this movie bombed at the box office. From a budget of $130 to $150 million, it bombed at $379 million and it received awful reviews for realizing why it got negative acclaim for pretty much taking the god out of Zilla. Since then, planned sequels were cancelled. Since then, I had no idea what happened to this awful movie. Well, the CGI animation of Godzilla looks a bit realistically weird. That he looks nothing like Godzilla, more of a T-Rex that was straight ripped out of Jurassic Park. If you'd picture this movie to Jurassic Park, it perfects the formula of how CGI animation can be treated to use dinosaurs as special effects. This one only had some baby Godzilla-like raptor creatures popping out of New York City. In what they noticed, they looked a bit weird for some reason. And above all, the jack of all trades, the soundtrack is by far extremely divisive. For some reason why, they had no idea what they're doing because the decent marketing and home media. They had an interesting concept of what the soundtrack was going to be like. If you look at the soundtrack video, even though you see the soundtrack, in the album for Godzilla, they added Puff Daddy's Come With Me, and also Heroes by the Wallflowers, Deep Underground by Jamiroquai, No Shelter by Rage Against the Machine, Air by Ben Folds 5, and also Running News by David New, and also Amazing Day Parade by Michael Penn, Walk the Sky by Fool, A320 by Foo Fighters, Brain Stew, the Godzilla remix by Green Day, Untitled by Savager, Up There by Fuzz Bubble, Undercover by Joey Deluxe, and the opening titles and Looking for Clues by David Arnold. So for some reason, I had no idea why the writers realized that Columbia did a nasty reputation doing this, so as I noticed because of the film turning 25 on May 20th, 2023, since its debut on May 20th, 1988, I'd say I had no choice but to realize it's just a god-awful 4.8 out of 10. I had no idea why it's so divisive, but the lesson is, it's quite an awful idea to rip off a dinosaur movie about dinosaurs, but you only put one T-Rex in it, and there were no other dinosaurs to be involved, even though they had to put King Ghidorah and Mothra on a bus. That is until Godzilla 2014 took the spotlight, when they used plot elements from the 1984 movie, where he was destined to save Earth from a far greater effect that would hurt him. Even though the Griffin got replaced by the Mutos, this is quite a much bigger threat than what it stays more like respected to its Japanese roots. Even though the 2014 one would eventually gain critical acclaim thanks to Gareth Edwards, if it wasn't for Roland Emmerich's take on Godzilla not being that properly funny enough, I noticed the writing is quite ridiculous to realize why this one got two more sequels. Like, mainly three sequels, like the Kong Skull Island spin-off, and also the Godzilla King of the Monsters, and its direct sequel, Godzilla vs. Kong, are all like merged together. But if you watch Godzilla and Kong, if you want to see that new movie coming out on March 15th, 2024, I noticed the Godzilla and Kong movie is coming out in 2024. I've heard some sort of rumor it's going to be called Godzilla vs. Kong 2, and I heard it'll be a lot brilliant than I can imagine. I know Godzilla vs. Kong is a much better movie than King Kong vs. Godzilla. You should give this one a try, for real. So that's all I can really say about this one. Oh, let's not forget that cringeworthy 1988 DVD that looks like you have to drink pee. For some reason, the European cover of this DVD looks like a giant eyeball staring at you that looks like it was ripped out of The Zone from YTV. And if you look at this version, this one had giant feet squashing some vehicles away. It looks blatantly awful You better have to stay away from his eyeball at all costs and his foot. That's all I can say about this one. Bye-bye.